For those of you that have not been here before, we'll introduce the candidate and tell you a little about himself, and then open up your questions. You can ask almost any question. There are a few illegal ones in the interview process, like personal, family, religious preference, things like that. You can't go down those roads. But anything having to do with leadership, education, obviously, is perfect. So, the school board really appreciates this involvement and help in this process. Believe me, they look carefully at these ones. It's their role and responsibility to make this decision, but input from you and other stakeholders is critically important part of the process. And we value it highly. So, with that, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Karsten Anderson, currently serving as Superintendent of Schools in Red Wing, and Karsten will fill a lot of stuff in from there, and then we'll open up to your questions. If you want to ask questions, just raise your hand and I'll go around.
Great. Well, thank you, Bob. I appreciate it. As Bob said, I'm Karsten Anderson, the current superintendent of Red Wing Public Schools. This is my 11th year there. What I'd like to do is just cover both my personal and professional life, just to give you an idea of who I am. I was born and raised in Montana, the son of a retired Lutheran pastor, and born in Havre, which is on the railroad, so it was a hard-working town, farming community, but raised mostly in Helena, Montana, and in the mountains, government town, very different place, but I love both Havre and Helena. After graduating from high school there, I moved to Moorhead, Minnesota, where I attended Concordia College and graduated from there with majors in math and computer science. Concordia is also the place where I earned my teaching degree. I also worked there in a residence hall for 2 years after college, so I had some of that experience. Since graduating from college, I've served in a number of education-related fields. I've been a classroom teacher in math and computer programming. I was a school district business manager for 3 years. And then for 6 years, I also served as an administrator for an international student program in Red Lake Falls. And so I had 40 to 50 international kids from all over the world who would live with me in a residence hall while they attended the public school in Red Lake Falls. One of the most challenging and rewarding experiences of my life. I've also been a principal at almost every grade level except for kindergarten. Those are for shorter periods of time. And then for 23 years, I've been a superintendent of schools all in Minnesota. 3 years at Clinton Graceville Beardsley, out by the bump between North Dakota and South Dakota. Also Watertown mayor for 10 years. It's kind of a exurb of the cities. And then this is my 11th year in Red Wing as a school superintendent. I'm looking for kind of a change as far as leaving Red Wing. Looking for a change in my life professionally. And so I've been looking at some different possibilities in the area. Brainerd is right there. It checks off all the criteria I'm looking for in terms of a community and a school district and opportunities. So I'm really excited about the possibility of living and working here. Personally, I'm engaged to a woman named Emily Gaida-Foos, who was born and raised in Red Wing. Her parents are longtime educators in the community, and she's currently the director for Red Wing Arts. It's a local arts organization that puts on a lot of great stuff in Red Wing, like the Fall Festival every October. So I hope you go to Red Wing for that. It's a great experience. You can buy some great shoes at Red Wing Shoes while you're there. But she does a lot of great things in Red Wing. We have a blended family, and we have 4 kids. They'll all be in different places next year. My oldest is Per, P-E-R. He's a second-year student at St. Thomas, majoring in mechanical engineering, and he has like 3 or 4 minors that he's pursuing. But he's on an ROTC scholarship, and so he'll be in the Air Force for at least 3 years after graduation. He's really excited about that. My next son is named Hans, and Hans was a competitive dancer for many years until he had a significant injury with his labrum. So he switched to diving and has had good success there. Loves sports. All of my kids are in swimming or diving. And yesterday he announced that he's going to Carleton in Northfield. So that was a big deal for our family. Gabby is Emily's daughter. She's currently a sophomore who is taking classes online through a program sponsored by Red Wing Public Schools. So she also loves horses. So she's riding horses at the barn quite frequently and competes in that as well. She's strong and independent. The fourth child is Lars. He's taller than me as a ninth grader, and just got his learner's permit. Loves Xbox games. Loves to swim. Has a lot of friends. Really personable kid. So all very different from each other. Air Force, Carleton. Some different athletics. It's kind of a fun family to be part of. So that's in a quick overview. That's my professional and personal lives. And I'd love to answer any questions that come up.
Who wants to go first?
I can start.
Great.
Yeah, so if you came here, if you were selected, how do you see finishing your career here? And maybe this borders on personal, but your fiance, is she really excited about Brainerd, or is it going to be hard for her to live there?
Actually, I was going to bring that up myself, so I feel perfectly comfortable with that question. Two-part question. First of all, at this stage of my career, I want one more position in a Minnesota school. And so if I pick here to be in Brainerd, that is my goal, is to finish my career in Brainerd. In terms of Emily, she's taking care of her mom in Red Wing. We only live 2 blocks away from Sandy, and so she would need to stay there for that. Also, as the director of Red Wing Arts, it's more than a full-time job with evening activities. So Emily and Gabby would stay in Red Wing while I move and live in Brainerd School District.
Okay.
So I'm thankful that you asked that, because I wanted to express that. I want to be forthright, with people about that.
Hi, I mentioned a little bit earlier. Mike Stanek, parent of 3 in the district. With the current political divide blending into education, how would you ensure that comfortable conversations are being had, and also that both sides, if you will, are being heard when you make those difficult decisions?
Yeah, that's a really good question, especially considering everything that's happened over the last 3 or 4 years. And I don't know if I have the magic solution for that, except I will state repeatedly, because I believe it, that all sides need to be heard. The problem that I've experienced, in Red Wing and other places too, is that people have their opinions, and it's important for us to listen, to hear, but it's impossible to do what everyone wants to do. And so from my perspective, I think it's really important to hear what people have to say, because we all have a voice in what happens here, and then to use all the data and feedback possible to make the best decisions for Brainerd Public Schools, its students, and community. So, the important part is to have that dialogue. And I can't promise that, well, in fact, I won't promise, because I really try to look at each issue separately. And sometimes one group will be happy and the other group won't be happy, and sometimes it's vice versa. But it's important to hear everyone. Yeah, there's no doubt. And you can do that in all sorts of ways. If it's personal conversations, if it's at meetings, if it's at school board meetings, it's important to hear that.
I'm Pete with the Brainerd Dispatch, but I also work on the chamber. I'm also on the chamber board of directors. How do you see yourself working with businesses? I know you mentioned you're a business manager background, which would be important in a couple of years. I think we have a levy coming up. How do you work with businesses besides the education side?
Yeah, and I hear we have a very active and effective Chamber of Commerce here. That's a big deal because the chamber plays such an important role in the economic development of any vibrant city. So thank you for working in that capacity. It's important to develop those relationships between entities. So I can talk about Red Wing, but I think the same kind of thing would happen here, and probably is happening here in Brainerd. But the school district is very active in lots of partnerships in the city of Red Wing. So we have good relations with the city and the county, as well as the Prairie Island Indian community, which is located within our school district boundaries. So we have multiple governmental jurisdictions, and we have good relations. So, for example, with the city, the school district provides health and safety training and a lot of other training for city employees. We work with them so that they provide extra work, like on sidewalk installations. We add on to their bids for big city projects so that we can get cheaper costs for the asphalt of our parking lots. You know, the last time we looked at all the partnerships with the city, there was literally a long list of different things that we do with the goal of providing great service at the cheapest cost possible. And sometimes you just share resources. With the chamber and with other businesses in town, we have one of our administrators who's an active member of the Chamber of Commerce. We work with Excel Energy. We've had partnerships that have included the Red Wing Shoe Company and other organizations. So we're very active, you know, in those kinds of participation methods. So I think we have a good track record in Red Wing. I can't take credit for that because so many of those relationships were in place before I started there, but I've definitely been part of it, and I think we've expanded some areas as well. Red Wing, well, since there's a pause, I'm going to jump in. Red Wing also has a really active group of foundations and nonprofits. It blows me away, actually. And so we really stress our partnerships with them. Some of those partners actually provide services within our school during the school day to help our kids, like youth outreach and Hispanic outreach. With the Prairie Island Indian community, we've partnered to have liaisons to work with our Native American kids during the school day. We have relationships with United Way and all sorts of great partners that want to do great work.
Tell us your management style. Are you a superintendent that mainly likes to be in the office and let other people, like the principals, run their buildings? Or do you see yourself as a person that goes out a lot there, but also sporting events? Superintendent Larson was great on making friendships within the community, and that was instrumental in passing the bond referendum in 2018. So can you tell us a little bit, like your first 100 days, how would you get started and how would you start building those relationships?
Sure. A lot changed during COVID, so we really kind of cut back on a lot of those personal visits during COVID. But I can tell you what we did pre-COVID and what we're doing again, you know, as far as a school district. I think that's an important distinction. You know, first I think living in the community is a great first step in terms of setting up those relationships, those friendships, those coffee conversations. I think that's an important part. I would encourage all of the administrators to be actively engaged in the community. We cannot require teachers or administrators to live in the school district, but we can hope and expect that they are actively participating. And that could mean on a local foundation board. It might mean giving presentations to different service groups and other community organizations. It could be a wide variety of ways to become involved. I think it's important to develop, you know, those trusting relationships, and I would do that, you know, as I move to Brainerd. In terms of visiting schools, I just told this to another group, so I hope I don't sound like a broken record, but I know the first day of the full year of COVID, my plan was to go to each of the elementary schools in Red Wing, each one per day as much as possible. So I started doing that, and I realized, wait a second, we don't want people, jumping from school to school when there's, COVID. So I really scaled back on that. But that's something that I'd like to redo again. Brainerd's a bigger place with more buildings, so it's a little more challenging. But it's important to be there whenever you can. Sporting events and speech and all the other great activities are also they're enjoyable, and so I would attend to as many as I possibly could.
Yeah, Tyler Glenn, I'm the Director of Economic Development here, so
You shared an office or
Yeah,
building,
yeah.
I've heard that.
No, so one of the questions so earlier today you would have met with the student body.
Yes.
Or the student leaders, if you will. Can you tell us a little bit about how that went for you? Obviously, it's near and dear to all of us. How you interacted with the students and kind of what rigors they put you through today?
Great group of
Yeah.
kids, and it's a great engagement exercise because they're the voice of tomorrow. So let's teach them now how to do that. To raise their concerns, to ask questions, to talk amongst themselves. And so they're tough to sell, and that's good. That's really good. And so often there'd be a question asked, I'd give an answer, and then there'd be a kind of a follow-up question or a clarification, or maybe it'd come up later. And that's a really good thing. You or we should be proud of that, with the students who showed up, and we should encourage that more and more often. So, I can't take credit for this. Okay, our school board chair can, but I'm fully supportive and I helped guide it along the way. But we are starting a student school board group in Red Wing with the high school, and it was almost the model that happened today, where there's a group of kids who want to be there, who are willing to ask questions and talk about important things. And that's what we're going to be instituting on a regular basis in Red Wing. We kind of started with following Rochester's model for doing that, but we're kind of adapting it to our own need. We only had 7 or 8 sign up so far, but we expect that will double or triple as things go on. We're doing it during the day so everyone can access it, and we'll have adults there working with them to present information and then to hear their feedback. So I think we need to do more and more of that, not only in Red Wing and Brainerd, but everywhere. Yeah.
In comparisons to the two schools, and I grew up south of Red Wing, farther south, near Rochester. How compare the two schools size-wise? Are they comparable? I mean, this is a growing school district, obviously, and has been for a number of years. Are the two schools comparable in size?
First, what school did you go to?
I grew up in Grand Meadow.
Grand Meadow with the domes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I followed that quite closely a few decades ago.
Yeah, my mom was the chair of the school board when that happened.
Oh, very good. Yeah, we studied it. Anyway, sorry. So the question had to do with comparing the two school districts. Red Wing has had declining enrollment for decades. We had our peak at about 3,500 kids, probably about 20 years ago when we had the strike. We had a big strike in Red Wing, and a lot has changed since that. I'm not blaming the strike on what happened with enrollment, but it was a big issue. So we had about 3,500 kids then. We're down to about 2,500 kids now, K through 12. So we're a little bit less than half the size of Brainerd. So that's a significant difference. There's no doubt about it. I will say though that there are remarkable similarities and differences. So some of the similarities is, first, they're both located in unbelievably beautiful parts of the country. With the lakes here and the trees and the trails, tough to beat. Red Wing also has the river, plus lots of great hiking and that kind of stuff. They both have really nice downtowns that are vibrant. Maybe they're coming for different reasons, but they're similar in that way. Brainerd is probably better positioned for growth and economic growth, and so I hope that's at least a consideration, within the community. Some people want growth and some people don't, so there's a balance. But I think you're better positioned right now. If Red Wing can turn around some things, then they'll be in a very similar position. So as far as the schools are concerned, we also have our version of a career academy model. You know, just like the high school, you ought to be proud of that. That is impressive. Your in-school model is stronger than Red Wings, you know, right now, but we're going to catch up. And we have a really, really strong internship program that we are proud of. And so we have about 60 to 80 kids per year, even during COVID, that went on internships throughout the community. So, and I'm sorry, school board members have already heard this. I'm going to say it again because it really impacted my life. But a couple years ago, after we started these internships, we have a coordinator, flight paths coordinator, what we call them. Before they go on the internship, our kids go through OSHA 10 training and kind of learn some of the basics as far as how to introduce themselves. You know, they're taught, keep your phones in your pocket, for Pete's sake. Know how to shake hands, some of the soft skills, because that's what our employees need. Some of the basics. And so we teach those things in class. But anyway, lots of great internships. My favorite story though is she was a junior or senior in the high school who ended up going to Montana State for engineering. And but she came up to the podium to give a presentation, and she took off her boot, put it right on the podium, and talked about how she designed that boot because of the internship. She worked with the leather and the stitching and the coloring of that boot. And so she essentially made that boot. Now there are some limitations. You can't have a high school senior using stitching machine, you know, that kind of stuff. But she was really proud of what she did. And what a great visual, you know, to have someone who's gone through that and is now, you know, pursuing an engineering degree in college. That's one example. We have another example of a student a couple of years ago who was offered a $50,000 job at one of the local manufacturing companies because of his successful internship. And, you know, the stories go on and on. It's not just manufacturers. We also have some nice programs as far as healthcare exploration with the Mayo Clinic there. So what I'm saying is that that's a similarity. You know, there are differences, but both Brainerd and Red Wing are really emphasizing those options with career pathways. You know, we just have some different strengths along the way. So sorry for a long-winded answer to I sometimes kind of follow through with some passions of mine.
Still, I met you before. I've got 2 kids in the district.
Yes.
I don't know, are you familiar with furries?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so if selected as our superintendent, what would your plans in place be to bring our district back to policies that are in place against disruptive behavior, like in the middle and high school? Students are allowed to identify as animals, such as furries who are allowed to pop up for walls, and now their answers has been barked at our students and staff.
Yeah, and we have some kids who call themselves furries, or other people call them furries, in our building. And you know, part of it is self-expression, and you know, we have to be careful about directly confronting that. For example, we don't want to tell people they can't wear something if it complies with our dress code policy. Just like I can't tell somebody you shouldn't be wearing a Green Bay Packer outfit because I love the Vikings. Well, okay, maybe that's one exception. You're a Vikings fan, right? No. Oh, really? Okay, well I definitely won't say don't wear the Packer outfit. You know, so part of that, but there has to be mutual respect. So certainly, regardless of what people are wearing, they shouldn't be teasing or making sounds, you know, against other people, you know, and they also shouldn't be the recipient of that kind of behavior. So it's an interesting phenomena, and there are a lot of rumors out there about furries and what's happening and what's not happening. And you know, I know that Red Wing schools and Brainerd Public Schools are doing appropriate things as far as handling that. So, but we set up the policies, we follow through with the policies, and we always emphasize mutual respect between people. Yes?
I'm Tom with APAC, and my question is, if you are selected as the next superintendent, can you share some of the initiatives that you plan to enact to better serve the underrepresented and diverse student populations and the hiring of underrepresented and diverse staff members?
APAC, by the way, and I talked to Tom just real briefly, American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. That's what APAC stands for. We have, it's required by either state or federal law that there is an APAC committee in every school that has at least 10 American Indian kids. Both Red Wing and Brainerd do, and so that's why there's a committee. I'm really thankful for the work that we've done in Red Wing with our APAC. And if you don't mind me just explaining a little bit, about 8 years ago, there were 2 parents who came into my office with concerns about how money was being spent in the Red Wing School District. The American Indian money that we received through Title VI and AMI funding from the state. They asked some really tough questions. I was still relatively new there, and so I didn't know the answers right away. So we did a lot of research into how the funding had been spent and how it was being spent, and we shared that with kind of a newly reinvigorated APAC. And we just laid it out there. And we concluded, the school district and APAC, that we should change that funding model. I'm not saying it was illegal, but there were questions about how it was being spent, because it wasn't being spent on directly benefiting the American Indian kids like it should be, at least from my perspective. So we worked with APAC over months and then over years on completely changing our programming for Native American kids. And it was because of the work with APAC that led that to happen. So now, as I mentioned earlier, we contract actually with Prairie Island Indian community to provide liaisons. They pay for part of the salary, and then we use some of our Title VI dollars to reimburse Prairie Island. Very effective. We have a very high graduation rate than most schools in the state of Minnesota for American Indian kids. And we're really proud of that. And I think it's because of the relationship with the local tribe. We've also hired a coordinator for that effort. And, so we're kind of moving in the right direction. Again, because of Prairie Island and the APAC, we decided this spring to start a Dakota language and culture program. And so we have 2 classes at the high school next year, fully funded, mostly funded by Prairie Island Indian community, but we are contributing $40,000 towards the effort. But we're able to provide those 2 classes to all high school kids. And all that happened because of our relationship with the local tribe and APAC. So they just won the big quiz bowl today at the American Indian Education Association conference. So they're really happy about that. It's kind of a quiz a quiz bowl about Native American language. So as far as hiring people, that's another, that is an issue that we have not solved yet. I'll be forthright about that. We have issues finding staff members in every category, regardless of the color of their skin. We are having a hard time finding people. There's some grow your own programs that are successful. We're also going to start working with some colleges, especially in Wisconsin, to try to get more student teachers. People of color to come to Red Wing, because we think once they come here, they're going to stay. So we have some ideas in mind, but we haven't solved the problem yet.
COVID has been tough on everyone, students, parents, staff. But what did you do in Red Wing to build culture and help morale in your school district?
For sure. It's been a devastating impact on everyone. Schools, healthcare, just people in general. So we've had a lot of transitions because of COVID, and we had a great plan to start the year. We made some significant investments, and we really put a lot into it. And I think teachers and staff members and parents really appreciated it. Since then, we've had to kind of change grade configurations again, and we had to close the building, and after reopening it, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's been a stressful, very stressful time for Red Wing people, parents, staff members, all of us. I would guess it's somewhat similar to what Brainerd staff members have experienced here, not just because of COVID, but you have a significant building project that's still unfolding. I've been through building projects before. It doesn't end on election day. It goes on for years, and it's exhausting. You have people moving and different classrooms and, all sorts of changes. So I'm sure Brainerd is experiencing something very similar to what Red Wings experienced. We did several things. I wasn't a fan of the first one, but the school board did decide to convert 3 student days to non-student days because they could feel the stress on teachers and staff members. It was right before Christmas. In the end, I think it was the right decision. I was not a proponent of it because I want kids in the classroom as much as possible, but I could sense the stress level really being relieved, from people because of that. We also have cut back on some of our bureaucratic expectations of teachers and other staff members, so that's made a difference. And we've provided more supports for students and staff members along the way. So those are some of the things that we've done, but that's going to be not only the issue of this time, but it's going to be an issue for many years to come. What can we do to help get people back on board?
I keep hearing a lot about Red Wing, and I know that you've done a lot of extensive research on Brainerd. So a 2-part question, I guess, is tell us a little bit more about that research that you've done for our community, our businesses, our school. And then also, if selected, what would you want your legacy or thumbprint to be at the end of your tenure here, based off what you've learned and what you would like to see?
Sure. One thing that, if I'm selected to be in Brainerd, people in Red Wing will be really happy because I won't be talking about Watertown Mayor and Red Wing. So, that happens to any new administrator, we always talk about experiences. I think I've mentioned a couple of them already, but I'll kind of expand. I'll start at the youngest age. So, early childhood, and by the way, this has not been vetted by anybody else and not by the school board. So, I'm not making a proposal or anything like that. These are considerations. So I believe the greatest impact that we can have is in early childhood. If the state and or federal government provide funding, I think Brainerd should be well positioned in order to make that happen. Research shows that will have a long-lasting impact on student success, student achievement scores, their ability to work, and all sorts of factors. So we need to be positioned for that if we take advantage of it. So that's one area. In terms of elementary schools, I think you have really strong programming. Your student achievement results are strong, especially in reading. I toured Lowell Elementary today, blown away by the work that's happening there, really blown away. I was going to tell the principal that you should be on the road with this. You should be sharing this out with as many people as possible. And if you haven't been to Lowell Elementary, by the way, everyone said that the elementary schools are also outstanding. I just happened to tour Lowell, so that's why I'm talking about Lowell Elementary. But they have studios where different classrooms, like first grade classrooms, are clumped together, and then they have specialists working in that area so that kids aren't walking across the building to get 15 minutes of help, and then they're going back and stuff like that. They have media resources right there. Everything's right there, so people are going back and forth. It's easy to cluster group kids in terms of reading abilities. Unbelievable. So if other elementary principals are interested in changing some programming, I think it should be considered. Doesn't mean that we will do it or not, but at least it should be considered. Middle schools, I'm not as familiar with the middle school programming here in Brainerd, but I understand the middle school philosophy inside and out. I taught 7th and 8th grade teachers for a period of time, and I really respect the belief that in middle schools we should be exposing kids to as many possibilities as possible, because they're learning, they're changing, they're able to explore even more possibilities, and we want them to be engaged with that kind of stuff. High school, I think you guys hit a home run with what you've done at the high school. You have that Bridges Career Academy programming is on track. And so I don't know all the details behind it, but I would be really supportive of further reinforcing that, to look at more college credit classes being offered through those programs in the school setting. And then also consider expanding career internship opportunities in the community. And both of those things not only are great for the students, but they're also great for businesses and manufacturing firms and arts organizations right in the community, because it increases the likelihood that they're going to stay in Brainerd and get a great job here. One example I heard from Lowell, from Todd Sawyer, the elementary principal at Lowell, was a student who really wasn't engaged in school. He didn't share his name, but all of a sudden one day he worked with a metal cutter and made something, I don't know if it was a piece of art or something like that with a metal cutter, and he became engaged with that. One thing led to another, and now he's building metal dumpsters. And I think the business is based out of Brainerd. So, that exposure, that experience, working with a trusted person made a difference in his life and actually helped the community. So if we can do that as many times as possible, that's the way to go. In terms of what my legacy would be, it's really our legacy, not my legacy. And I think when we have to figure out, what do we want when somebody walks across the stage? That's what we want. And I hope that everyone who walks across the stage can choose what they want. If they want to be in the military, then we want to prepare them so they can be in the military. If they want to be an entrepreneur in Colorado, then we want to prepare them so they can choose that path. If we want them to be a manufacturing worker or leader, then let's give them the opportunity to experience them, the skills, all the different possible pathways for that. So that's what I want, but it's really our legacy.
With the new curriculum standards that they're working, excuse me, Kevin Stumpf, and I am, I don't have any students going to Brainerd School anymore, but I did have. I am on the DAC committee. But with the new standards, the curriculum that is coming up through the legislature, and they're working on it now, some of the stuff gets a little scary from what I've read on some of the stuff that they want done. And especially a lot of the stuff hasn't even been implemented from the last time they did it.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're going to be doing another one. Where do you see that working out with the big picture?
Sure. And again, my comments are just my impressions, on April 14th. They don't represent Brainerd School Board or District or Red Wing School Board or District, obviously. Yeah, we have a lot of standards that we're expected to teach in schools. A lot of standards. Some of the new standards coming through the legislature or through the rulemaking process are unbelievably good, and some, I think, need more work. And I'll talk about the science standards. A lot of new science standards coming up that will really change how we teach science. And I think in general, because I like the hands-on stuff, more kind of project-based stuff, It's called phenomena science, where, you know, kids are kind of studying a phenomena. You know, and then you can really learn from that. You can use computer modeling, for example, in elementary schools or high schools to understand how a weather system is being impacted by wind currents or something, and that's why we have snow in Brainerd on April 14th, you know, for example. So some of that work is really exciting. It's a higher level order of thinking. Another example, though, I've always been frustrated with the number of science, or with a number of standards, because schools cannot possibly teach all of the standards that are already in place. And if we're adding more, it makes it even worse. There's one study by a researcher that said that if a typical school with a typical state standards did all of it, it would take over 20 years to actually do it. Well, guess what? We don't have 20 years of schooling. And so I'm a proponent of identifying what a lot of people call power standards and really focusing on those things as best as possible. There are some other controversial standards that are going through the system. I know there's some about math and social studies. I have not followed that real closely, so it's hard for me to comment on those particular things. I just hope that whoever's making those decisions are hearing from a variety of stakeholders, especially people from school who know what we can and can't do in a school setting. So I don't have an opinion on some of those more controversial things.
I just have a follow-up question from what you were talking about with working with the tribes in Red Wing. I'm just curious, like, how did you build those strong relationships with them? You have a strong relationship. I just want to know, like, how did the school district go about that? Was that in place before you came? How did you add to it? You know, I just want to kind of know more about how it began and how those relationships got strong.
Yeah, things ebb and flow in every school district. So I'm sure Red Wing had you know, the APAC committee for maybe decades. You know, I don't know. But for whatever reason, it was just a formality, and it wasn't a highly effective group. You know, when I started. I think the reason it became successful is that we listened to people. We didn't blow them off. We listened. We provided the information they were looking for. We shared it in a transparent way, and then we took their feedback seriously and actually changed what we were doing. So, you know, for a while there, we were having 20, 25 people come to those APAC meetings. It was fantastic. Since then, you know, I think a lot of those things were taken to a step where they felt better about. Then things started to, we didn't have the people coming to as many meetings, and now it's kind of coming back. So the key is to listen, to have an open mind, and to actually listen to feedback and take action as appropriate.
And did you see changes in those numbers? Like you talked about graduation rates, did you see changes in those numbers over that time? Or
You know,
like that? Did you measure that?
Overall, I wish I could take credit for the high graduation numbers for the American. I can't, because we've had strong numbers for years because of previous relationships and what the tribe has done for the school and the students. I've maintained that relationship, and then we've added some other programming, you know, like the Dakota language program. We also have a Native American literature class in the high school. It's elective, and you know, we have a great teacher who brings novels written by Native American writers, and it's a great class. And you know, people choose to be in it, and we only run the class if we have enough to warrant it. But it's been, yeah, we're able to do some of those things that are really impactful. Yes.
Yeah, you brought up enrollment issues that you had in Red Wing, which is going on across the state.
Mm-hmm.
Brainerd is experiencing that now in part due to the chaos of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd be coming into this. How would you try to turn this around where we'd start getting back those students that went to the private schools or, you know, area school districts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have the data for Brainerd to completely understand why people chose other schools. I'm sure some of it is because of masking policy. We would have lost other students if we didn't require masks. Either way, we would have lost kids. I'm sure there are other issues that have been that have been around for probably years or decades, as far as people choosing. So I think one thing that we would want to do is better understand why there are some kids and families choosing other districts or private schools. We have to understand the why part, and then we develop the plan accordingly. The best way to respond to declining enrollment because of open enrollment losses is to put the best possible product on the table from early childhood through the high school, through community education. Always focus on the best quality education possible, because that's the right thing to do. And if we do that really well, and we explain that consistently to stakeholders, then I believe people will choose Brainerd Public Schools. I think we have some advantages here that other neighboring schools just don't have. And we need to talk about it and share it and get people not affiliated with the school to be talking about it and sharing it with their neighbors, that kind of thing. So I know it's a simplistic response, but I think that is the best way to get those kids back. Another thing I'll just point out real quick, I'm really impressed with the location of the Early Childhood Center and kind of the programming they offer there, because we want kids walking into our school building that's really impressive with a great leader, personable leader, because when kids drop off, their early childhood kids or kindergarten teachers, you want them to feel that their kids are going to be safe and appreciated. I know when I was walking through, the first thing that, there's a student looking through a window, walking through that building, and, the administrator knew the child's name. That's what you want as a parent. And so we want to get them in that building, experiencing that as soon as possible, because we'll get them here. I have no doubt, as much as we can.
We had one of the other candidates brought up that over 50% of the licensed teachers in the state of Minnesota are not teaching, and as of right now, the way they talked, there was a problem with having enough teachers to do the job correctly. Why do you think that is?
A lot of different reasons. Some are national, some are statewide. I think to me, there feels like there's an erosion of trust in what we do. And I think there's a lot of criticism about the work that we do. And I think that impacts kids as they're making career choices. I think that's a big part of it. We've also had a tough couple of years here. So we weren't getting, I'm sure Brainerd's the same way. Not a lot of teacher applicants for positions. And then when COVID hit, things fell apart. And, there's a lot of stress that's felt by educators. And, that's also discouraging others from coming back into the schools or from choosing education as an option. So, those I think are the primary reasons for it. There are ways to solve it. First we need to make sure we're sharing the positive message. We need to lobby the legislature for making some changes in the teacher education entrance requirements. We need to make some changes in terms of who can sub in our schools, because we need subs. When we don't have enough subs in the schools, then that further complicates things for classroom teachers and paraprofessionals. So let's get those subs in the schools. Those are legislative things that we need to do. There's some other possibilities as far as starting grow your own programs in the school setting. I was asked that at one of the recent interviews today. I have not been part of it. But there are some school districts that actually have classes in the high school, maybe the high school already does, where they're learning how to be a teacher or learning how to be an educator. And so that's part of it's almost like a career pathway. And then they go out and experience, an internship. And so that's one way to try to get more people to be considering the possibility. And we need to do those things. The problem is that they don't bring people in right away. I mean, that is like a 4 to 6 year process before you start seeing results. So it's the issue of our time. You know, we need qualified, highly capable and passionate people to be teachers and continue to be teachers in Brainerd.
Last one, I promise.
Oh, keep them coming, no problem.
In regards to the growing interest of curriculum transparency, what are your thoughts on to what level of transparency parents should be entitled to on curriculum?
This does have to do with like with posting syllabi on websites and stuff like that?
That's the way you want to take it?
Yeah, or I'm sure there are other things too. So the question had to do with the transparency of curriculum. And I don't think we need legislative action. I don't think we need a rule. I think it should just be kind of part of our daily life in schools. So, you know, it's very common, you know, college professors have a syllabus for every course. So, you know, I think my guess is that most teachers in Brainerd probably have something similar, something that describes what happens in the class, what's being taught, the different expectations for grades and behavior and those kinds of things. And it's very easy just to post those on a classroom website. So, you know, the question is, should it be required? I'm not so sure, but they should be available to people who want to see them. You know, there are other efforts or interests as far as knowing exactly what books are in each media center and those kinds of things. My personal feeling, again, I'm not representing anybody with this comment, but I think the best deciders of that would be school people with expertise in that, including media center specialists and principals. But, you know, there's some legitimate concerns that are brought up from time to time that I think we need to consider. So that's kind of my response with curriculum transparency. I know that if that same question was asked to Jess Whitcomb, she would, Director of Teaching in Red Wing, she says, we already have it. We're already doing that. You know, so it's just a matter of how it's presented and how the information is shared.
I guess with that, so did you look at Brainerd's website, look at what we have posted, and have you talked with the fine man back there, Mr. Murtha, about what his job is here and what he's done?
I've looked through the website, and I was focused on, you know, some other things when I did it, so I didn't dig deep. I think there's also a staff section of the website, is that correct, where I think there's a lot more information?
Well, there's both public information and internal resources. What Mr. Stanek is referring to is an inventory of resources that's on the public website.
Oh, on the public website. I didn't see anything like that on there. You know, I know that in Red Wing we've been entering all this information, you know, all of our media books, all of our curriculum, workbooks, everything into this system that can track everything because we're trying to save money, essentially what we're doing. And so at the end of, you know, probably take another summer, we'll be able to press a button and we can get all that information, you know, pretty easily. That's very labor intensive. And I'm not saying that's the right solution for any other school district. I know it's an issue, but, you know, I really trust public schools to make those decisions. I really do. And I know we work with parents and other stakeholder groups, but I feel good about what schools are doing in general. I don't know all about the specifics, but in general, I certainly do.
This has to do with teaching. You did kind of answer some of it, but I did ask the other two that we interviewed. So as we know, that teachers are overworked, they're very, very stressed. I think a lot of them are underpaid. If selected as their superintendent, what plans would you put into place just to offer teachers more support and kind of relieve some of that stress for them, especially in the elementary schools where those kids are younger?
Sure. And you know, one thing I should always highlight is that everyone is stressed. You know, certainly educators are, so are healthcare professionals and police officers and parents and kids, regardless of their vocation. We're all stressed. And you know, so I think your question probably gets down to, you know, what can we do, you know, specifically for school people. And we've done a couple of things. I don't know if they're here in Brainerd, or not, but we changed our employee assistance program that we have through our, I think, LTD or life insurance policy. Often that's very common. EAP is what we call it. We weren't happy with some of the vendor services that we were receiving, so we issued an RFP, paid a little bit extra, but we have a new EAP program that is outstanding. And so we actively encourage our staff members, by sharing information with them, by discussing the information when there's an uncomfortable conversation occurring, those kinds of things. We encourage people to call that number, to set up an appointment with the EAP, to talk about the issues that they're dealing with. Could be stuff at home, could be stuff in the school, it could be questions about why am I still teaching, whatever the issue is. Because we want to get people with the issues to be talking to people about it, especially with people with background. So I know that has helped specific staff members in Red Wing kind of navigate through some of this stuff. We're also, it hasn't quite come to fruition yet. We have a school-owned and operated clinic for our staff members. And so we were hoping to add a mental health practitioner using some COVID money so that our employees could go receive in-person counseling whenever it was available. Haven't found the practitioner yet, but we're working on it. In terms of kind of more general things, it's important to maintain the positive attitude, to constantly remind ourselves through words and actions that great things are happening and to focus on those great things. And I think that's a lesson that all of us should learn. I need to learn it. Every day I need to do that. And I think we need to work with our students and staff on that as well. In terms of supporting students, because that impacts teachers, we've done some other things. We have a mental health therapist position now for every school that's paid for through insurance payments. The problem is we can't find the practitioners, so we're waiting, to fully implement that, but that's going to help. We've implemented some things for staff members and students as far as, I can't remember the name of the program. Oh, I do this too often. I think it's Calm curriculum. I don't know if that sounds familiar, but it's kind of a mindfulness curriculum, and so teachers who wanted to do it are implementing. It's a 3 or 4 minute exercise where kids and teachers kind of focus on mindfulness, and so that's proven to be helpful as well. So those are just some examples that could be done. Any other questions?
So, in this community, the previous superintendent, along with the board in this community, obviously, as you've spoken about, you went through the high school, you went through Lowell today. Basically, whoever steps into this position, not to be elementary about this, but we're giving somebody a brand new car.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's beautiful. Everything, the facilities are beautiful. All of the communities that are impacted with our facilities, are going to benefit from that. It was a huge ask of this community. It was a huge ask of the taxpayers in this community, in the communities that represent District 181. So now, as you've probably heard, and what we all are hearing now is that we're probably going to have a financial shortfall in the next couple of years, and potentially needing to go out for an operating referendum. How would you position yourself to make that ask of this community again so soon after the $230 million referendum has gone through? And how would you educate? I feel it's an educational piece. So how would you educate the community that this isn't part of the build out? This is what we need to operate this school day in and day out.
Yeah, great question, because it leads into the future. First, I'm usually the last person to sell something like that on, because I ask a lot of questions along the way, and I try to scrutinize them before recommending something like that. And I think that's important. As far as planning for that possibility, I think the message to people through information is, this is the plan, this is the ask, you decide. Is it worth the extra money? And that's how people are gonna vote, and they should vote that way. So that's kind of a general statement. I will say that this was quite a project, this building project. Thank you for voting, or thank you for considering it. Thank you for providing information to the community so they can make a decision. It has and will make a difference for Brainerd for decades to come. I see it. And I've only been here for a couple of days, but I see it. You should be proud of that. That decision, or that vote, will positively impact enrollment for years to come. You know, it's gonna be hard for people to walk away from the new pool, from the Performing Arts Center, from career academies, and these other great building improvements. It's gonna be hard. So the next phase, and this happens in other schools too, it's happened with me, is that it's important to start looking at the educational plan. Some people call it strategic plan. I like calling it educational plan because it's about the education of our kids. And that will take a comprehensive effort involving all sorts of stakeholders to determine where we want to be 3, 5, or 10 years from now. And I don't know what that's going to look like because it really depends on you know, the community. And then I would think that through some sort of filtering process or prioritization process, we will decide what our vision of Brainerd Public Schools will look like, and then really refine it. You know, you always put cost to things, you know, that kind of thing. But that's the plan. And we will move forward with that plan the best we can without resources. You know, you always tackle those things. And then at the end of the day, there will have to be some tough decisions, maybe, about whether that should lead to an operating levy referendum or not. But it has to be a very strong planning process to get to that point. It has to be for the right reason, and we have to have a good plan, and then the voters can decide. The next phase after that plan is done is to share information with the public. You will never hear me say, vote yes on anything. Never. Because my role as an educator is to provide the information. It's not to tell anyone to vote yes or no. That's my role. And so I will follow that to the end. And but I will compile all the information, or we will compile all the information necessary so that voters can see the choices and so they can decide if it's worth paying extra on their taxes. And then we live with the results. You know, that's kind of how it works. And sometimes the answer is no, sometimes the answer is yes. But at least the voters get to decide. And I think it can be frustrating at times, but it's also a really, really important thing. So, yeah, lots of information. I could go on and on about some different strategies that I've learned along the way, but that's what it is to be out there and share with as many people as possible.
You mentioned some ideas earlier, but what are the biggest opportunities for someone coming in fresh, get a fresh start in Brainerd? What are the biggest opportunities you see?
Repeat the last part again?
What are the biggest opportunities coming in fresh, as a person coming into Brainerd? What do you see as the school district as an opportunity, the biggest one?
Specific for the school district?
Yes, school district.
Yeah, the one potential area of growth really are even stronger community partnerships, especially with internships and relationships with businesses. I think that it's a game changer. And I think Brainerd is particularly positioned to make that happen really well. You have such a great start, and you already have some strong connections in the community. I think they could even be bolstered more. But that's just Karsten with quick initial impressions. But I really see the value in that. So I hope it's at least considered or reviewed, and maybe decisions that no, we're set. We're on the right path. You know, we have the right partnerships and internships. You know, but at least it's something that could be considered.
think the first night I said.
You were coming back, I know. I'm good.
That's your last
Yeah,
question.
I'm good. I'm good.
You can ask it, it's okay.
No, that's all right. No, I'm good. It was already asked, so.
Oh, okay, all right, all right.
Well, first night I said, we go until 6 o'clock or until nobody asks any more questions, so there we are, so. And then, we'll let Carson have a chance to make a couple closing comments, but first just wanted to really, again, express appreciation for your caring and involvement and input into this process. Those are things that make for a great school district, when you have people that are committed and are involved and care, so, thanks, on behalf of the board. Karsten?
Well, thanks a lot, Bob. You kind of stole my final
Oh, well,
comment. No, but actually, seriously, it's important for a public school district to hear from all sorts of different people with different perspectives. And, the worst thing possible is to have everyone just thinking the same way all the time. We're much better if we hear those different perspectives and we talk about them and we come to consensus of some sort. So I don't know where everyone stands on different issues, but I can tell you that if I'm hired as superintendent, I will listen to people, I will hear what people have to say, and I will do the best I can for the students of Brainerd Public Schools, and taxpayers, and staff members. That's important. That's my vow, is that I will do whatever I can. But yeah, thank you for coming, and enjoy the 4-day break from school. I know many of us have to work still, but I hope you can enjoy some time with your families.
And I just wanted to say something to the board, so we so appreciate you letting the community come in. I am really disappointed that not more people showed up, but we have consistently been saying things over the last year about transparency, and it is greatly appreciated.
We got a great board.
The world belongs to those who show up. All 8 of us.